All right, we are live. Second time on here, Dynasty After Party with Club Fantasy. Hello, how are you today, all you lovely people? My name is Michael Sicoli, and I'm your co-host today at Michael_Sicoli on Twitter. And today I'm not joined by Joel. If you're noticing, it's a different handsome gentleman right next to me. Ryan Weisse, I'm with right now at the Fantasy 5 on Twitter. Club Fantasy, amazing, writer, editor, everything. How are you, Ryan?
I am fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. You called yourself a co-host. You are the host tonight. You're carrying all the heavy water. I'm just here to bring an excellent beard and terrible dynasty rookie takes. So that's
Oh,
what I
well,
bring to the show. So
I disagree with both of those. I find your rankings I'll give it solid. I'll give it solid.
I
The beard,
appreciate
though,
it.
10 out of 10. Better
I
than,
appreciate
almost as
that.
good as James Harden was earlier today. I'll say that. But listen, and you touched it right there. All right, rankings, rookie rankings. That's what we're going to be talking about right now for this Dynasty After Party. We're going to talk about our Superflex ranks, our 1QB ranks, everything that will help you guys do your Dynasty drafts justice in this amazing time of year of May. So, again, we're doing a live show right now. We would have a couple people coming in. Be sure to drop any comments in the chat about what you see, what we're talking about, as well as if we could help your Dynasty team at all. That's what
Yeah.
I emphasize every show. We're doing this show not just to talk into the void. We're doing it to help you guys win some championships, make the right move. So if you got questions to ask, feel free to shoot them out there, and we'll jump right into that. All right. Well, let's not waste any time now, right? Let's
Yeah.
jump into some Superflex rankings. I'm gonna pull up our club fantasy rankings. Both of us have our own in there. I'm curious before as I pull this up, who was the hardest player that you had to rank?
So for me, and if anybody has tuned into any club fantasy show forever, you know that I don't watch a lot of these rookies really until the draft time. And I've always been a person when it comes to rookies that cares about landing spot and cares about draft capital. So really it started getting into the people who I really thought I liked, but then ended up in bad landing spots. So I'll start right away, like Zach Charbonnet off the rip, where everybody's not sure what to do with where he landed. For me, it's like I was such a Kenneth Walker guy. Like I ended up in a draft last year where I kind of dominated the year before on the trade. So I ended a bunch of first round picks. So I took Brees Hall, but I was able to turn Brees Hall into Kenneth Walker and more picks because I liked Kenneth Walker better. And so for him to end up there, like I keep finding
Hurts.
myself going back because the way I like to do rankings is I'll compare myself to you guys who know more than me. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'm too high on this guy. Maybe I'm too low on this guy. So Charbonnet has been a tough one for me. Kendry Miller, and I know he's getting a lot of hype right now. The coach just spoke out for him. That was a tough one for me because I don't know what's going on with Alvin Kamara. And so, like, the running backs in general, like, I kind of like Chase Brown more than I like any of them. And Chase Brown and
Really?
Kendry Miller are kind of in arguably equal situation, if you will. So,
Well, let's see. You do have Chase Brown almost as high as everybody. I believe actually, yeah, you do. You do have Chase Brown as high as everybody, and a
yeah.
pretty good spot for him. Or as high as Joel does, but it's a good spot for Chase Brown. I think it's an interesting talent type of guy when we're talking about a guy who did fall to the fourth round. It is a day three thing, but listen, Samaje Perine had several incredibly productive fantasy weeks last year. And we're not going to say that he's going to be, exactly what Samaje Perine was. He earned that role, and Chase Brown has to earn himself. But there's a lot to like in a day three landing spot, and he's going to go behind every running back that is of note in this class. So
And
there's
what
an
I'm
interest.
noticing is I'm in a ton of live drafts right now, and I know you are too. He's
Mhm.
for a day three pick, he's falling in the third round of almost every draft. And I'm talking superflex or single QB because people don't love this draft class, plain and simple. So,
Yep. Plain and simple. And honestly, I understand it. I get to certain points in the tiers where I'm searching for trades out. And listen, I was sitting at the 102 in both of my leagues where I have the 102. I was desperately trying to trade back to the 103, and I pulled it off in one league actually. I love JSN. I like Jameer Gibbs. I am perfectly happy with either or. And I was able to swindle actually one of my roommates into moving up a spot for Jameer Gibbs, who I was not in a good position to take in that league. And I got JSN. I got Elijah Moore out of it. It's a lot of it is where the tiers are. And I think I was talking on last week's show. For me, at 1 QB, there's a tier at 5. I don't consider Quentin Johnson in that top tier of receivers. I'm fine with Zay Flowers at 5. I love Jordan Addison at 4, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, and obviously JSN. But we are talking about a cliff after that, in my opinion. And I truly am looking to move out whenever I'm in those situations.
See, for me, and again, I'm not the most experienced player, and I lean on team needs heavily. Even the JSN bothers me a little bit, where I kind of, and right now, if you look at my rankings, I don't have Gibbs ahead of JSN, but like a lot of my teams are RB needy. And so like I have
Yeah.
Bijan and Jahmyr just so far ahead of everybody else where I'm like, I want that 102 so bad. And I'm just begging that they go JSN and let Gibbs fall to me in a couple of my leagues.
It's a whole other thing when you do rankings and all of a sudden, like, yeah, I feel good about having JSN at 2. And then I'm like, oh, but I want Gibbs, like, and I
Yeah.
started tilting myself a little bit. I want to say, yeah, good evening to everybody here. We got Scampers pulling up. I was here last week. Happy to see you again, as well as Albert American. Good to see both of you guys pop in.
Albert, the most polite gentleman in the chat that we've ever
I remember
had.
that from last week too. I remember Phil mentioning that. Listen, we like politeness here at Club
Exactly.
Fantasy. I think that's an admirable trait that we like to have.
But no, you hit one nail on the head that I feel like we have to address publicly on the show. And you talked about how you keep why am I blanking right now? The kid who went to the Chargers, of course,
Quentin Johnson.
Quentin Johnson, you keep him out of your top 5. Austin keeps him out of his top 20. We've been giving him a hard time about that. So it's interesting to me. The argument I made, and you were on the live draft show with us when that was all going on. The argument I made is when you get these young wide receivers, I understand it's not an ideal situation right now where you have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams ahead of him, but he's tied to Justin Herbert, and I think that counts for something. And so that's why I've been battling on Addison or Quentin Johnston for a while now. And I'll say I've gotten into drafts and the decision was made for me, as in like, I knew I wanted to walk away with Addison. So I had to go back and change my own rankings because I originally had Johnston, but something about winning this upcoming year, I was like, Addison has a chance. You don't know how long Kirk Cousins is his quarterback, but he at least has him for this year. He has a chance to be the wide receiver 2 in a very pass-friendly offense. So Addison kind of jumped ahead of Johnston for me there, but our buddy Austin just destroying his consensus ranking right
He
now.
did. And honestly, on that's an excellent point you bring up. And I think that's such a really important thing for us in the industry when we make rankings. We realize this where we get on the clock and we realize we have guys higher than we really think they are. And for me, I had that same epiphany earlier today. It's Tank Dell for me. It's Nathaniel Dell. I have him at 30, or what do I have him at? This is a little bit hard for me to try just because I am scrolling, but I believe I have him.
You have him at 28.
I have him at 28. And truthfully, it feels a little bit too low for me. Maybe I think I'm chasing the narrative, maybe a touch too much of CJ Stroud wanted this guy. It's an open situation. And I'm forgetting that, listen, rookie quarterbacks don't supply a ton of fantasy value to its weapons. It's still a bad offense. It's still Houston. Tank Dell is not a otherworldly prospect that I was in love with pre-draft. But when you're looking at where he's going in rookie drafts, he's going in the back of the second round, early, mid-third. And it's an incredible opportunity to be the wide receiver 1 for his team that people just don't have in that range.
This was a problem I ran into last year with Wan'Dale Robinson. I don't like these small, skinny wide receivers.
Yeah.
And so, like, I thought I would be the lowest on Dell because, like, when I saw his size, I was like, nope. So I plunged him in my rankings right away in size just because it terrified me. And then again, so how I typically do my rankings is I will have my first set of rankings based on everything I've learned about these players leading up to the draft. But then I go landing spot and draft capital. And I actually value draft capital more than landing spot even, where I kind of have this rule of thumb when I'm resorting my rankings after the draft that a guy can't be ranked behind somebody who was drafted 2 rounds after him. So like if I love somebody in round 4, I still won't put them ahead of somebody who was drafted in round 2. Just draft capital difference on that. It's just too much for me, where I'll let someone skip 1 round ahead. I'll never let someone skip 2 rounds ahead. So it's just a little weird thing I've come up with. So.
No, it's a good process because every year I think we look at it of which day 3 running back is going to get replaced. This year was Tyler Algier. And it sucked because I was beating the drum from all last year and actually anti-beating the drum on Dameon Pierce. And Dameon Pierce is the one that survives, and it crushes my heart, Ryan. I'll tell you that. It does crush my heart. But along those lines, I want to throw one other name that I was someone I'm in drafts, and all of a sudden I really do want more pieces of Puka Nakua. Another
Yeah.
guy I think I'm going to raise in my drafts a little bit, and it's understandable if you don't know who Puka Nakua is because he was a Senior Bowl guy. That like he was a guy that broke out of the Senior Bowl, and that's when we started talking about him. Fourth round wide receiver, went to the Rams. I'm not going to say it affected my judgment, but he is wearing Robert Woods' old 17. And listen, the Rams are in such a weird spot, and they had a ton of picks. They had a ton of late picks, but they have a ton of needs, and they chose to take Puka Nakua at wide receiver in an incredibly thin room of, what are we talking there? We're talking Cooper Cup. We're talking
Yeah.
not even Allen Robinson anymore. Van
Nope.
Jefferson, the
Ben
tiny
Skoranek.
microscopic Tutu Atwell.
Yep.
Like it's a wide open situation, and I do think Puka Nakua has some juice. I do think he can get it done after the catch, and I do trust Sean McVay to get him in situations for that. So
Well, and that's an interesting point you bring up because there were a lot of Pukanakwa, Debo Samuel comps. And if you look at the way
exactly,
Sean McVay likes to use his wide receivers, even Cooper Cup, they run the ball. Cooper Cup carried the ball 10 times a season easily, scores 2 rushing touchdowns a season. When
Rob Woods
Cooper
too.
Cup, Robert
Yeah,
Woods, when Cooper Cup and Robert Woods couldn't do it last year, Robert Woods wasn't with the team, obviously. Tutu Atwell, who is not the size of Pukanakwa or Cooper Cup, was still being used in that same way. So they're going to Sean McVay is going to have no issue finding ways to use Puka, and he needs to. And so I actually absolutely love it. And you, me, and our buddy Chris Molina all have him ranked 37th, pretty far ahead of everybody else. But what's even crazier is if you look in drafts right now, he's falling late 4th, early 5th round. So with us, we have him as a late 4th round pick, even in this single QB ranking right now. So
and I'm going to emphasize what Scampers put on the chat there. Puka. It's also an
yes,
excellent name. We like rooting for Pukas of the world.
yes,
I also see
absolutely.
your comment about the trade. We're gonna get into that. We're gonna talk about our trades as we do every week, right after we talk about the rankings. So I do want to. We'll touch on that real soon. One QB situation. It's a little bit different, obviously, from very different from Superflex, but something I know Joel wanted to touch on. He obviously couldn't be here today, but what he wanted to mention was where do we start looking at quarterbacks in one quarterback? Because I think a lot of people try to wait, you slide, and all of a sudden you're realizing, especially in this class, they're the best player on the board. So I'm going to scroll up here to where the range of where we
Yeah.
have these day one quarterbacks. Where do you see comfortable? Because we have a very wide range of rankings here.
So for me, you'll notice they all fell kind of in a line. Right now I have it sorted by consensus. Let me sort it by mine real quick. But they all fell in a line at 8, 9, and 10, talking about the 3 major guys: Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and Anthony Richardson. And it's for exactly what you said. I'm someone myself who has been learning the ways of Dynasty and Superflex. And if you've watched the Club Fantasy Dynasty show before, you've heard me talk about this. We've had very smart people on the Dynasty shows tell us in Superflex, it's get quarterback no matter what. But then this year it was, well, get quarterback after you go out and get Bijan Robinson. And then last year it was Brees Hall. But then when you get into single QB, it's almost to the point where QB just doesn't matter. And the issue you run into is in a standard like 10 team draft, if there haven't been a ton of trades, the last 3 people in the round probably don't need a quarterback. They were the final 3 teams available
They
in
have a
Dynasty.
Josh Allen.
So, yeah. So, unless, I mean, last year would be a better example. Unless you had Tom Brady, who had that great final season or second to last season and got you there, you weren't thinking quarterback when you got to that pick. You didn't need quarterback. So it's almost an NFL type situation where the teams who picked first and had to take Bijan and JSN and Jahmyr Gibbs should be looking to trade back into the back 10 and getting these quarterbacks because of exactly what you said. In a typical 1 QB league, we're not talking quarterback till end of the second round. Now all of a sudden they're the best players at the end of the first round.
Yeah.
And it's not, I understand if you truly believe in one of these guys, and we're seeing it a lot with the Anthony Richardson truthers, they believe in their guy. You're going to add them and you're going to sit on them. But for a player like me, most of my dynasty teams are riding with Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen right now. It's how I decided to build my teams when I got them. And my backup's Geno Smith. And I'm just like, I'll figure it out when I get there. I'm not going to draft Anthony Richardson in a single QB league, as I know he could be great, but that's just not how I'm going to build my team if I'm sitting with a pick at the back end of the first round. So that it makes it an interesting fit this year.
And the one thing I really, really want to stress, this is my strategy when it comes to this. And I think you talked about when you do your process for actually ranking these guys. I will never, ever, and I have learned my lesson, draft my rookies that into my dynasty team based on team need. Never.
Yeah.
Never will. We'll never do that again. I hated Trey Sermon. I hated Trey Sermon, the prospect. But he was sitting there, and I wanted him because I needed a running back. A year later, Trey Sermon was no longer eligible for my taxi squad. And thus, he got a letter of, what is it?
Yeah.
We were talking firing. We shot him out of a cannon, Ryan. I was not happy. And
Therapeutically, I just cut Trey Sermon in a team today too, and it felt great. So,
it
like
felt
literally 2
great.
hours ago.
Oh my goodness, it felt fantastic, but it didn't feel great when I spent the 110 on him the year before. So the reason I'm bringing that up here with quarterbacks is you take the best player on the board when it comes to your rookie values because you never know what's going to happen in the NFL. We're talking, listen, Kyler Murray, top 5 dynasty quarterback 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Still young, still a good quarterback. Right now, who knows what happens with him? All of a sudden, it's a couple down years, has the ACL tear. What are you gonna do? Josh Allen, let's say he get, God forbid, because I just did this today, but like I have Josh Allen in one of my leagues. If he misses time, does my competing team really want to settle with Jimmy Garoppolo with what
Yeah.
Jordan Love might be? So I went out, I got Bryce Young. Because you know what? I'd rather be safe than sorry if I could just button down the position because I think Bryce Young is an infinitely better player than taking the shot on Marvin Mims, which I like Marvin Mims, but you got Marvin Mims. You got, give me some tiers here. We're talking Tank Dells. We're talking Roshan Johnsons.
Yeah.
Day 3 running backs or day 1 quarterbacks. And I think that's a great point.
Yep. No, and that's you're saying it exactly. Day 3 running backs have such a hill to climb.
Yeah,
And so you should not be considering any of these guys over quarterbacks. I think honestly, and I'm probably out talking my own rankings here, Will Levis should be ahead of those guys just because there was significant draft capital there, even though the team itself is a mess. I have him at 24. So I have him right around the day 2 or actually, no, I guess it's the day 2 running backs is where I have him at 24. And so like, the quarterbacks are more talented no matter how you feel about Will Levis, because obviously there's just insane everything about Will Levis out there right now. And the landing spot, you don't know what's going on there because they've already swung and missed at quarterback once, but at least the top 3. If you're, like I said, if I am a team that was lucky enough to have the 101 and get Bijan Robinson and still had quarterback issues, I'd be trying to trade back into the back end of that first round because more than likely in a single QB, the championship team doesn't want to draft a quarterback. And if you can walk out with AR and Bijan Robinson, you're going to compete sooner rather than later. So.
Yeah, this championship team decided to double on up and get that Bryce Young, Josh Allen stack in the 1 QB. Just that was a quick flex of the back-to-back title over here in the home dynasty league that we're feeling good about. But that's not the point. I want to bring up a Scampers comment. I'm excited to cut Sermon in the coming days. I am excited for you.
We should turn this into a holiday, the cut Trey Sermon day.
It's just an anti-Trey Sermon show. That's what this is quickly turning into. And who's just a quick one. If you have to do a rapid fire, is there a Trey Sermon in this class? Is there somebody that's even if it's not a running back, is there somebody that's going way too high that is going to be cut next year? I don't know. Probably not.
I was going to say that's such a out there. I'm not willing to throw anybody under that bus yet as I'm scrolling down these rankings a little bit. I don't think there's anybody who you can say is going to be on the streets next year. I don't know if any of those picks were that bad. I will say I'll throw a name out here, and it's a name nobody wants to hear, but he went later than what everybody expected, and I don't love the landing spot. Oh, Kevin throws a name out there real quickly.
I see that right here. We see it.
No one's gonna like my name. No one's gonna like my name. Let me throw it out.
I like the Jonathan Mingo pick, just for the record. Go on.
I'm worried about Israel Abanikanda because he ends up in a very jammed up backfield and he can't pass block for Aaron Rodgers. That's a fatal combination right there. So if you need me to name a Trey Sermon, I'm gonna say Izzy Abanikanda. I don't like it.
He went to the back end of the second round in my recent draft today, which I'm from New York. I'm gonna blame it on that, but. I think that's a great name. Listen, the Jets were looking at Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round, apparently.
Yeah.
Why? I have no idea. But it shows how not happy they are with the running back room and feels like it's going to be the same way next year. But let's make a little switcheroo over to the Superflex side of the ball. And I will throw out the one person as well. I'll save it for the trade portion, a little teaser for you guys for later. Because listen, I pulled up a little draft day trade today, and I felt very good about it. But let's talk about Superflex rankings. You'll notice a similar name on top. It's still
Yep.
going to be, or we are still waiting for this to, where I'm showing the wrong screen because
Oh, I was
some.
like, yeah, that's
Am I
the
showing the
single
wrong
QB
screen? I
stuff.
am
Yeah,
showing the
you're
wrong screen.
yeah. When it just says plain rookie, that's the single QB, and then Superflex, it'll say on the
See, we
top.
call it technical difficulties over here,
Exactly.
and that's where we're going to go. Where we're going to go switch it over right here.
Hey, there we are.
Still a name on top for most of us outside of Mr.
Yeah,
Molina
Chris
over there.
Molina throwing AR on top.
AR on top. I won't lie. Let's just start talking right at the top. I don't even want to talk about Bijan, but I do want to talk about Anthony Richardson. Is he your QB1? Like he's not in your ranks, so
Nope.
I know the answer. But I have been struggling. It's hard for me to. I don't feel good about having that too. You're the lowest, obviously, of everyone out there. So let's hear
Yeah.
it.
I right now I have them ranked in order. I fully believe NFL teams are smarter than I am. What I will say is this actually goes against, I don't want to say against, but against what I was saying before the draft. And what I was saying before the draft is the person who ends up in Indianapolis has a head start, plain and simple. You have a better team there. You have a better organization there, though their owner seems like a moron sometimes. But overall, you feel like that person's probably got a head start on everybody. Right now, at this very second, before we've seen them with their teams, I am ranking them in the order they went in the draft. Do I see the upside of Richardson? 1000%. It's the Justin Fields upside. There's no denying it whatsoever. But right now, I'm going to keep them in the order that they went, and I'm going to hope for big things out of Bryce Young. I kind of like the weapons they're putting around him in Carolina because they're not field breaking weapons, they're not game breaking weapons, but what they are people who are going to be open for him to get rid of the ball quickly, and I think that's going to be very important with the team that they have in Carolina right now.
It's hard for me. I was listening to the Athletic amazing podcast that they put on every single week, where they bring on a GM and they talk about it. And what they were talking with Anthony Richardson was, and it's a great point that I truly should have been thinking about before. Jim Irsay is pounding the table for a quarterback. This was the owner saying you need to take a quarterback at 4.
Yep.
At that point, Bryce Young is gone. At that point, CJ Stroud is gone. And they're saying, do we want Will Levis or do we want Anthony Richardson? Because our owner is telling us we have to pick one.
Yeah.
Now, that's not a ringing endorsement, despite the 4th overall pick. And I'm not saying that's what happened because I wasn't in the room. But that seems awfully possible to me, given that Jim Irsay himself has tweeted that we are going to take a quarterback pretty much and posted all 4 pictures of them. So,
Yep.
And
then did you see Irsay say, should I shake the world up and take Will Levis on dates? Or like, Irsay's such a dick.
he's all over the place. All over the place. And Scampers brings up, he gets the Minshew tutelage, obviously. Listen, Jalen Hurts was obviously a result of Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody else deserves more credit for Jalen Hurts' success than Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, okay, we're all on the same page here. That's why Gardner Minshew is our QB1 for Dynasty.
Exactly.
But Anthony Richardson, I come of the mindset that I'm willing to be wrong and just take him. I'm willing to take him as my QB1 because I know he's going to start week 1. They've already come out saying that. So I'm going to get Justin Fields production. I feel like I'm going to get that 15 carries a game, that 12 carries a game. And I trust this coaching staff that did it with Jalen Hurts to at least put him in a position to be incredibly fantasy relevant and get at least a 2 to 3 year leash because of the draft capital invested in him.
And let's not forget about this offensive line. And obviously they've undergone changes in the last 2 seasons, but this is one of the better run blocking offensive lines in the NFL. We saw Jonathan Taylor score 20-ish touchdowns for this line 2 years ago. Yes, and so if you put Anthony Richardson behind that, that's some bananas production that you could get out of there. Arguably, you could see and better than what we've seen from Justin Fields. And that is saying something. Now, the question is, are they going to be willing to run the ball as much as the Chicago Bears? And I don't quite think we're going to see it to that level, but Richardson's arm is going to play big into that as well.
Yeah. And we do have good weapons as well as Indy. I don't want to also dismiss that of Michael Pittman's a damn good wide receiver. Josh Downs, in my opinion, was arguably the best value in this entire draft class because I love Josh Downs, fell all the way to the 3rd round. But terrific value in my
Well,
opinion.
I love
And
Downs too, but let's not forget Downs doesn't even need to play right away. The Colts jumped on Isaiah McKenzie when the Bills let
they
him
did.
go. And so I think
That's a good
Isaiah
point.
McKenzie could teach Downs. Downs might be the fourth wide receiver coming in on that secondary slot position. And then it's just, is Alec Pierce ready to step and be that second outside wide receiver for them?
That's another good point as well. And I mean, we saw bits and pieces from Alec Pierce last year. I personally I wasn't looking into him. I wrote a rookie profile for him last year and I liked what I saw. It was a big wide receiver. I don't think he's a high ceiling guy, but he gets the job done. And I think it's a good pairing with Michael Pittman. And we saw strays of that last year.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember how bad the quarterback play was last year. And if it isn't one of my favorite commenters, hello, Faith. And one of
Good
our
evening,
two
Faith.
favorite people. Oh, good evening
Absolutely.
to you. But I want to talk about some other things in the class.
Yeah.
Will Levis was a little bit difficult to rank, as well as Hendon Hooker. It feels like both those guys. I'm kind of just I don't want Hendon Hooker. It's a fantastic situation. He can easily step in for Jared Goff next year. He got third round investment. I truly would have to go back and do some real research into the last time a third round quarterback became into something in the NFL.
I saw a wonderful meme today where it said that Hendon Hooker is the type of player that you're going to feel really happy to have on a rookie contract, but you don't want to pay him a big contract. In other words, he's a Jared Goff type. And I was like, perfect.
I kind of feel the same way because I don't
we,
know what the ceiling is for him.
we
I
had
really
Chrissy.
don't.
We had Chrissy Freud on the big show a few weeks ago, the Wednesday show, and she really likes Hendon Hooker, but all other smart people have said she's too high on him. So I'm not going to say one way or the other. I think it's a great landing spot for him because it's Goff's teams this year. So it does make him hard to rank in Superflex, but you've kind of said one very important thing. If Goff's gone next year and it's Hendon Hooker's team, this is a Hendon Hooker team that has Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs playing the slot. This is a very dangerous team. And then they went out and added Sam Laporta on top of that. Like, this is a team with weapons and young weapons that Hooker is going to get to grow with because Laporta and he are probably going to be working together immediately. Jameson Williams, because he is not suspended for the entire season, he's going to get to practice with the team. He's likely practicing with Hendon Hooker because they're not going to play him with the ones with Jared Goff right now when they know they can't use him for the first 6 weeks of the season. So there's going to be a chemistry built between Hendon Hooker, Jameson Williams, and Sam Laporta that could very much translate to the field next year.
I do want to poke just the one thing is the ACL of how soon are we going to see him back on the field in terms of building that. But during the season, it's entirely possible we see Jameson Williams working out with the scout team and things like that. I see Hendon Hooker start back there. And the reason I scroll down here on the rankings, as you can see, we have quite the diverse rankings for Hendon Hooker. I have him among the lowest. I have him at 27. Ryan here has him at 15. We have him as high as 12. So a first round
that's
pick in 12-team leagues.
That's Andrew.
That's Andrew. So it's listen, I get it, and like I said before, I still am going to have him ahead of a Zach Evans, like I have right in those ranks of 27 to 31, just because it's a quarterback. We're talking quarterback versus day 3. We're looking at those types of values. And you can bring up a great point as well about Sam Laporta. I think that is a really good piece that they're going to build up into the future. And my goodness, the opportunity you could even have in year 1. But
I think the quarterbacks I found interesting in Superflex have been the Aiden O'Connells and I just got to find the other name on my list.
I love that Aiden O'Connell spot. I also the Jake Haener.
Jake Haener. Yep, that was those are the two names.
I'm on the wavelength. On the wavelength.
Those are the two names that, so when drafts are starting, right now Sleeper has their ADP way too low. So I go and add them to my queue right away so I can pay attention towards the end of the draft. And I have some drafts coming into the 4th, 5th round right now where if there's no electric position player, and this goes back to what we were talking about in the 1 QB ranks, if there's no electric position player, I'm going to take a shot on these quarterbacks that could potentially steal a job next year. Why wouldn't I? Derek Carr and Jimmy Garoppolo are not fan favorites or team favorites right now, and these were the guys drafted by the current staffs. Why not?
Listen, you're beating my drum here. I have Aiden O'Connell at 36 here. I haven't looked extensively to see who I'm the highest on of the whole group of us here, but apparently I'm an Aiden O'Connell.
You are Aiden O'Connell. You're 2 ahead of Chris Molina. I have him all the way down at 50. I'm sitting here talking about liking him, and then I'm almost the lowest on Jake Haener. But this is what we talked about in this. What I love about this is sometimes you need to talk out your rankings to figure out like, hey, maybe I'm wrong about this, because right now I have these guys not being drafted in a 5-round 10-team league for Superflex, and they certainly should be. So that's something that I need to look into my own rankings and adjust.
And there's a noticeable difference between O'Connell and Hayner for me, just on 2 points. One, I actually like Hayner a little bit better as a prospect, but they got similar draft value. In fact, O'Connell, I think, got 3rd round versus Hayner's 4th. What I care about is the ability to show it, because they're neither are going to get the chance going into next year to be the starter. No, it could go well for them, but like if they don't play and they sit as they're supposed to, the team will not trust them to be a starter in 2024. It's just not how it works with the draft capital.
I'm going to throw one thing at you, though.
Go.
This is the Josh McDaniels that went ahead and said, let's just see what we have at quarterback to end the season. So I don't know if that's necessarily
might not make it to the end of the season.
That's fair as well.
So then at that point, maybe we do see the rookie. But that's exactly my point of, listen, when is the last time we've seen Jimmy Garoppolo play a full season? Let's talk about that. Like, listen, I could
really good point.
I can walk to Timbuktu and get back before Jimmy Garoppolo plays 17 NFL games starting now. All right. This is it's just not, it doesn't happen. It hasn't happened for him yet. And at that point, maybe it's O'Connell that gets the call up, maybe not. But if it's a lost season for the Raiders, which it's the Raiders, it probably will be. There's a good chance you see their young guy step up. And like you said, it's the handpicked guy. And Jimmy Garoppolo is the ultimate handpicked guy, but
his competition's Brian Hoyer right now.
Yeah. Brian Hoyer, and behind the highest paid quarterback in history, Jimmy Garoppolo got himself a really good contract. Really good contract. But if the Raiders know how to do anything, it's burn money like they're in Vegas.
Yeah.
So call it leaning into your strengths in a way. Any other names you wanna bring up? Any names that you were struggling to rank, happy to rank, found yourself changing on in drafts?
I'll tell you one that keeps coming up for me in drafts, and it's not necessarily Superflex versus 1 QB, but this is one that it's interesting. This was a narrative I kind of rolled with heavy last year about Green Bay just not using their tight ends. And any league I'm in with our founder, Josh Hudson, and any group chat I'm in with our founder, Josh Hudson, he has just been destroying, not even Tucker Kraft, but Luke Musgrave. He has just been going in on Musgrave and how he would not touch him under any circumstance. Yet I'm finding myself drafting him in so many leagues in like the 3rd, 4th round, because like I feel like he's there. He has that 2nd round draft capital, but like it's funny because I was the one who's like, Green Bay doesn't use their tight ends, and mainly I was using it as an argument to be anti-Cole Kmet because of the offensive coordinator coming over from Green Bay. And now I'm like, well, I mean, who else are they going to throw to? Maybe they'll use their tight ends now. So.
Listen, I'll tell you who they're going to use. It's going to be the other 2nd rounder that they got, and I'm holding myself back. I have become a mega Jaden Reed truther in the last
I've moved him up so much since my initial post-draft rankings.
I'm holding it back for the trade because, spoilers, I traded up for him earlier today.
Okay.
But it's an interesting situation because I think we've never seen a Green Bay offense not run by Aaron Rodgers in a long-term status where the coaching staff was planning to not have Aaron Rodgers. And listen, we talk, when we're on the Dynasty After Party here, and I got Joel as my co-host, we're going to talk about Packers at any point. So when we were talking about it last week and possibly the week before on a different show, but we're going to see a different offense. I think we're both in agreement there. We're going to see a drastically different offense that doesn't operate out of shotgun nearly as much as it did last year. And that's just one of the many changes that I think we're going to see. And maybe that means the tight ends are more involved. They drafted 2 of them. They did draft 2 of them. So they needed the help in the room. They went out and got it. It probably won't happen this year just because of rookie tight ends, but it's a very unsettled receiving room. Who's to say? And
then the last people I'll throw out are some of the day 3 running backs that landed in interesting spots. Zach Evans with the Rams. I'm a notorious Cam Akers hater. I'm not even so much a Cam Akers hater, Achilles tear hater. And so I worry about Cam Akers, and Zach Evans is like pretty much all they have there to back him up at this point. I mean, they drafted Kieran Williams last year. And then Eric Gray with the Giants. Saquon Barkley's playing on a franchise tag right now. And so that's interesting. The draft capital wasn't there, but there could be some opportunity that appears out of nowhere for some of these younger guys.
You're talking about the two guys I was higher on than most people were pre-draft as well. I was too high on Zach Evans, so I am very excited for what he could do. Sean McVay said he had special traits, guys. That's cool.
All we
Special
need.
traits by Sean McVay. But Eric Gray was another guy that I thought he just doesn't have the top tier athleticism to be the starter, but he has wiggle. He can make people miss, and he has the size to run through it. So I think he's a really good spot start backup, which is a perfect spot that he landed in with New York to be exactly that. And like you said, A, contract year Saquon Barkley. B, he hasn't shown up yet because he doesn't have an extension, and who's to say he does? I think he will. I would be very surprised.
The more you let these rookies play, though, the more they earn playing time. So.
Yes, they do. And listen, someone's got to get snaps with the first team. Matt Breda's gone.
They brought Breda back.
They did bring.
Yeah, they brought Breda back, and then they have that kid they drafted a few years ago. I can't think of his name right
Gary
now.
Brightwell.
There you go. Yep.
Yippee. Gary Brightwell, the amazing.
Who I think has seen like 11 carries in 2 seasons. So it's not happening.
I didn't actually catch them bringing back Breda. That is a disappointing development.
Yeah, they brought him back on I think a 1 year, and actually it wasn't even that bad of a contract if I remember.
I don't get it. He keeps on finding deals. I'm happy for him. I liked him.
One of my favorite things I dug into a few years ago on Breda was Breda somehow got this reputation of being like a pass catching back. But if you go look at his pass catching numbers, they're awful. Like he has
just
no place.
He's small and fast, and people say that's a pass catcher. That's why, because he's small and fast.
Yep, and he's not a very good pass catching back.
No, it's awesome. I love the narratives that we build around each other with things like this. But that's what we want to touch on with our Superflex rankings here and our 1QB rankings. I want to touch on some trades like we did last week. Still kind of settling on a name for this little segment. Joel came up with one I kind of like it, the do better trades of the week. So we're going to touch on some trades that simply we need to do better on, people. Yeah. We need to do better. As well as trades that, maybe they were great. I just want to talk it out. And again, I really want to stress, if you guys have trades in the chat, if you guys have Dynasty questions in the chat, please feel free to throw them out. This is where I want to help. And at this point, I want to also bring up Scamper's trade from earlier this night. Just had a lovely drunk trade go through in his 1QB half PPR league. So, so side A is the 101 and Kirk Cousins, again, 101 quarterback league. For Najee Harris, the 107, a 24 second, and a third. Well, I will take the Texas
Bijan side all day. Good
I will take Bijan Robinson. Definitely the drunk side. Definitely the drunk trade here. Yeah. I effectively paid this, but replaced Najee Harris with Christian McCaffrey about 2 months
I was just going to say, that's the cheapest I've seen Bijan go for ever. I have been throwing the kitchen sink at a guy for the 101 in a league. And I'm talking the 103, the 105, Deontay Johnson, and like 2 other players, and he will not accept the trade. Bijan is my piece to win a championship in this league, and I'm loaded at wide receiver. And I think he knows that. He will not accept this trade. If I could have pulled this off, I'd have been in tears.
And the good tears. We're not good tears with that because, oh my goodness, yes, I think that is where we're in nice agreement here. I think we're going to take the 101 and Cousins side, and Kirk Cousins gets too much hate for the perennial QB1 that he is as well.
I was going to say, if that team needs a quarterback, that's a top 12 quarterback.
There, so. That just got Jordan Addison as well.
Yeah.
Like, why not? Let's see what they can do. Every year I'm too hopeful on the Vikings. And last year I bought into it. But some other trades that we saw go down. Jamar Chase for Deontay Johnson, Drake London, Christian Watson. Feels like a do better moment, to be honest.
Yeah, it feels very, very cheap for Chase, and it feels like someone who's chasing depth. Like I get like I'm really bad at wide receiver, so let me get 3 for 1, but that's not a move I'm making for Jamar Chase.
I'm not either, and you have to be the real like Johnson. I believe he's going to bounce back and have a good season, but it won't be as good as Chase's is. Yep. Drake London, I find myself the lowest on Drake London out there. I didn't love him as a prospect personally. But we haven't seen it from him either. We have Desmond Ridder for another season. Who knows what's going to happen there? And listen, Ridder did hyper-target him at the end of the season. Yeah. Small sample size. We have Bijan coming into town.
I was just going to say, there's real concern about passing volume in Atlanta now. So
22 carries a game, 22 pass attempts a game. That's what we saw with Chicago. That's what we're going to see with Atlanta. That's a team that bulked up the lines, that added Bijan with the number 8 overall pick. Come on.
I'm a part of a few... I'm a part of a few Facebook groups where they're constantly putting trade things out there for Dynasty. And a lot of times I see trades like this for Jamar Chase and most recently Justin Jefferson, and the crowd will be like, you're giving up too much for one player. And I'm like, no, that's not how Dynasty works. So I have to be like, this voice of reason is just some asshole on Facebook where I'm like, no, if you get the superstar, you win the trade. Because something when I wrote with the fantasy footballers, they always said that stuck with me is don't ever just look at this as Jamar Chase for 3 players. This is Jamar Chase and 2 empty roster spots. Now you get to decide what the other 2 pieces of this trade are, and that's just as important. So
That's a great point. I think it's an excellent point, as well as if you have maybe rookie picks to fill those holes or other assets
exactly.
to trade and get a cheaper thing that maybe would you rather this side, this Chase side, and then you also send a third to get the, that 30-year-old breakout late in the year.
Exactly.
Dante Foreman. If you
Cordero Patterson 2 years ago.
Exactly. Or even last year for the first half of it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways you could plug holes to make up the little bitty pieces that are a little bit more. So that's a do better right over there. Keenan Allen for Antonio Gibson at 303, 305. I am going to happily take the veteran Keenan Allen. However, I think a lot of people are very scared of Keenan Allen. I think this trade shows it.
Yeah. So I'll openly admit I'm a part of this trade. And what it is I'm the one who moved Keenan Allen.
Okay.
So I've been in. Yeah. So I'm a big Keenan Allen guy, one of the biggest in the world. However, in my love of Keenan Allen, I've also acquired a ton of Mike Williams. So I had Allen and Mike Williams. And being a Cordero Patterson guy, I am starting to get thin at running back. So I am someone who notoriously trades picks away. I needed draft picks. I am relatively loaded at wide receiver. Keenan Allen is my oldest wide receiver, and I needed running back. So this was a win-win for both teams here. But sending Keenan Allen away from my team breaks my heart. I'm not afraid of him, but it broke my heart sending him.
I will say, like you said, it's very team dependent. I like Keenan Allen in a vacuum a little bit more because I'm treating both these guys on 1-year windows. But I do like Antonio Gibson, and it's not lost on me, and it shouldn't be lost on any of you that Washington did not add a running back. They had every opportunity to. They were rumored to do so.
They brought in Chris Rodriguez in like the 7th round.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
That's when I say don't add a running back, I mean one that I'm actually worried about. So
yeah, that's fair.
Chris Rodriguez was not somebody that I believe he was outside my top 15.
Especially with that draft capital.
So that's an excellent situation for Antonio Gibson to jump over Brian Robinson, who I don't think is that good anyway. And while the coaching staff has done everything to shun Antonio Gibson into the moon, I don't know if that works, but
works for me.
He has every opportunity yet again. And I'll bring up a quick question, quick comment from Scampers because we have to work in our Trey Sermon hate. Even with an empty roster spot, I'm still cutting Trey Sermon on principle. This is the anti-Trey Sermon show.
Yeah, it's not there. Plain and simple. What's funny is he's not even young. He's not like one of those guys who came into the league as a 20-year-old rookie. I believe he's 24 years old already. Like, you hate to say that the man's career is over at 24 years old, but the man's career is over at 24 years old. So.
It's not great, especially one that doesn't pass catch. And 24 years old. I just wanted to vet that. And for reference, Antonio Gibson, who we are talking about right now, is also 20, or he's turning 25 in June, to be fair. So 6 months older. But Antonio Gibson, it's a good little team dependent here. One, Tyreek Hill for the 104 and 210.
This is
a super flex trade as well.
I submitted this. I'm not involved. This would have fallen deeply into the do better section for me. When I saw this trade go through, I was heartbroken that I didn't have any ones to go out and try to acquire Tyreek Hill because I just feel like this is not enough for Tyreek Hill.
It's interesting because we're talking about super flex here. So this is effectively
they're likely to get the worst quarterback.
This is effectively you're getting the third quarterback off the board is who you're going to get here. And the 210, which we're going to talk about a Marvin Mims, maybe. Yeah. For Tyreek Hill, the wide receiver 1 effectively last year, and will be the same thing.
One thing I'll throw out fairly, because you did bring up the quarterback thing, and I didn't 100% jump to that lens, is the team who moved Tyreek Hill in a super flex is quarterback dependent or quarterback needy as well. So to give them, I still don't think it's enough personally. But I do. Bringing up the quarterback and bringing up the fact that he's likely to walk away with Stroud or AR, it helps, but it's still not enough for me.
That brings up a quick thing I want to talk about because I think it's something that everybody goes through. When you need to get a quarterback in Superflex, especially a young one, a rookie one, you have to overpay. That tends to be the price that you have to go through. So listen, if you're rebuilding and you have to send Tyreek Hill for the 104 and 210, at what point do we, we're talking about, wow, I wouldn't have sent Tyreek Hill for that, but what young quarterbacks are nearly impossible to get. Would you have rather, let's view it like this. Do you think that you could get a 2024 pick and would be happier with that instead of going along this route? Maybe you get, I don't know, maybe you get the 107 and a 2024 first.
I was going to say, knowing I know less about the 2024 class than anyone else, and knowing that it could easily be the 107. No, you're absolutely right, because at least with this, I'm walking away with one of those three guys who I like. So.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's all just important things to bring up.
No, it's a great point. Yeah. I mean, you've talked me off the ledge. I hated this trade, and now you're like, yeah, you're kind of right.
Hey, listen, I'm here to play devil's advocate on occasion.
No, it's perfect. I always tell this story. I've been jaded by Superflex because I've never had a very high draft pick, but I've had guys fall in my lap towards the back end of the first round. I landed Deshaun Watson and Josh Allen in like back-to-back years with like the 9th and 10th pick of the first round and a Superflex. So I'm like, quarterbacks will just fall to me. And now, of course, it's not happening. But like I'm that guy where I'm like, just wait. Serendipity will take care of you.
And all of a sudden you're looking and it's just, oh my goodness.
It's Will Levis.
Sam Darnold might start like, week one. Sam Darnold's the only healthy 49ers quarterback.
Exactly.
Everybody. Let's go. Who was also released in my one quarterback league today. Sad face. I love my Sam Darnold guy. But another trade. Geno Smith, Aaron Jones, Jerome Ford, who I tweeted about today as a low-key dynasty winner. Tyjae Spears for Desmond Ridder, Zamir White, Will Levis, Dalton Kincaid, and the 401. Again, if you're watching right now and you just heard that and you weren't quite looking at the screen, it is on the screen right now if you need to track that, because that was a lot of names. But
yes,
I have a strong opinion here, and I'm curious. I want Geno. I really, really want the Geno side here.
Yep.
I think Aaron Jones is going to get a ton of targets. I think Geno Smith is going to be a solid quarterback this year, and it's not. I don't think
it's a foregone conclusion. He's done
that. He's gone. Yeah, I don't think that's a foregone conclusion for people. I think we're looking at how this is a ridiculously talented Seahawks offense.
Yeah.
If Geno Smith could operate it last year, you have JSN as your wide receiver 3. You added Zach Charbonnet to take off some heat, and additionally, the running back that you lost your running game halfway through the year when Kenneth Walker got hurt. This is a foolproof offense. It feels like. And Geno Smith's going to get to run it. And truthfully, I want that over the who knows what Will Levis will be. Who knows at all what Desmond Ridder will be. Zamir White's nothing. Kincaid's pretty cool, but still, it's going to take time. It's a tight end. It's where are you at? It might be somewhat team dependent. If you're a contender, I might want the Geno and Aaron Jones side. I'm speaking over everything at this point, but go on.
You're doing great, because I don't mind saying again, I'm involved in this trade, and I am the team who took the bad side. And here's what's hilarious. When we made this trade, none of those rookies were in there yet, and that's why the 401 is still listed, because we haven't got to the 401 yet. So the long and short of it is, I had a team where I made a very hard playoff push last year. It fell apart. My team is completely in shambles. I made an awful Travis Kelce trade earlier in the offseason and realized that my team's just in very bad shape. And so I wanted youth, and this went to Josh Hudson. And I was like, look, bro, do you want to win now? He had the 201 and the 202. Will Levis and Dalton Kincaid were sitting there. I wanted both of them. I was like, look, send me both these picks. This is what I'm willing to send you. He countered with Jerome Ford. I did not want to move Jerome Ford, but I wasn't going to risk renegotiating and losing one of these deals. Exactly. And so he countered with Jerome Ford. And so walking away with Ridder, who is probably going to lose his job. I get it. Levis, who hopefully has this job. This trade could be absolutely terrible for me. But the reason I took it is I'm looking at this in a 2-year window. If it is terrible for me, it's terrible for me for 2023 and 2024, and then I don't have to worry about it anymore. So.
And that's what I was really wanting to touch on at the end there. I was scared of taking all the points because I do that sometimes. No. I do. There's a very clear message with each side of this. Of one side, I'm contending. Aaron Jones, listen, I like Aaron Jones. He's 28 years old. That is near the end of the mark for running backs. Geno Smith is a little bit up there in age. Plus, there is that. I think he could last, but there's a very real world he's gone next year. So Will Levis is the guy that it feels almost impossible that he won't be up in value this time next year purely on narrative. It could go the Kyle Trask route, which wouldn't be great, but it could also go any other route where he just gets the opportunity to start, and he's a tremendous value in this deal.
Putting it bluntly, this is one of the very few leagues where I actually still have my own 2024 first round pick.
Good
So
job.
I'm probably going to tank for the first time ever and go get. I know there's some quarterback that's really good next year. Yep, there you go.
Yeah, Caleb. And listen, if you get Caleb, I think any deal you get is a tremendous win. And honestly, that's also weighed into the equation here with these deals of listen, if it makes
I'm
your
not
team
afraid to
worse,
lose
get
every
Caleb.
game next season. Yep,
It's fun. Tanking is fun. Oh my goodness, I'm tempted to do it in one of my leagues that I have a good team in. It's problematic.
I've never done it, so this is super.
Oh, it's awesome.
This is my first year of rebuilds, and I have 3 of them.
You haven't lived, Ryan, until you started Chad Hansen in what would be a championship week if your team was actually playoff worthy. You have Chad Hansen going out there for the Houston Texans, catching 3 touchdowns that you picked up off the wire for no reason whatsoever. And then he's not even rostered the next year by an NFL team, let alone a fantasy team. Yeah. It's the Travis Fulghams of the world, the highs and the lows of Dynasty. I'm getting too poetic. Let's do a couple more, and then we're going to wrap up here. Damian Harris and Jerry Jeudy for DK Metcalf.
Not involved. This is one of my leagues, so I'm interested to hear what you think.
It's funny because I'm a big Damian Harris guy. It's funnier because I'm an even bigger Jerry Jeudy guy, but DK Metcalf is very clearly the smash answer here for me. This is somebody that is the top dog in a incredibly talented wide receiver room. And listen, JSN is going to help DK Metcalf. Not that like in the same way that Tyler Lockett does too.
Yeah, that's exactly my thought here. It goes back to what we said about the Jamar Chase trade is you're prioritizing depth, and Damian Harris is barely running back depth at this point. So you're prioritizing depth over the superstar, and DK Metcalf proved it last year. DK Metcalf showed us a part of his game we didn't know he could be as a possession receiver last year. And if he ever is able to combine possession receiver with burst wide receiver, we might see a season like we've never seen before in the NFL. And as you brought up, the addition of JSN helps that kind of
scenario. My goodness, it does. So, we haven't seen the best from DK Metcalf yet, which is insane. Because listen, we know what he is as an athlete. He's still like 24 years old. He's only 25 years old. He has so much football ahead of him. And I'm incredibly excited to see it on a personal level. So I think we're both going to take the DK side there. Yep. Khalil Shakir and David Bell for DeAndre Swift.
Now this was in your do better section, correct?
This is very clearly a do better section.
Yeah.
I would
if
hope.
Someone offered me that for my DeAndre Swift, that's hard. That's a hard one to counter.
We're gonna take the mic real close to this one. I want to make sure my message is out here. This feels like a cry for help. This feels like the DeAndre Swift owner is being held hostage somewhere, and I just want to let you know that if that's the case, the Dynasty After Party can help you. We know people to call.
Yes,
we have rankings. We have amazing shows like no pun intended on Wednesdays. We have mock draft shows on Mondays. Whatever you need to not send DeAndre Swift for Khalil Shakir and David Bell, that to me is a do better trade. And I believe that's something that Joel threw in the doc, my goodness. We're going to take the DeAndre Swift side.
David Bell was fun for about 7 minutes last year. And I don't even mean in real football. I mean in Dynasty in 365 days, he was fun for about 7 minutes because he went from a team where he could have been the third wide receiver to where I'm not sure he makes the team next year as a former third round pick. David Bell might be the next Trey Sermon.
David Bell, that's an excellent point because that's it. It's a guy who went like mid-second last year and now probably won't be on the roster next year. And the 7 minutes, I'll say he had 14 minutes because he had 7 minutes like right before the combine testing that cratered everything.
Yeah.
And then he had another 7 minutes when he got third round investment and we're like, oh, maybe it could work out. And then every single minute besides that has just been a steaming dumpster fire thrown on top of a landfill on top of another landfill. So
and never ignore what a team is telling you about its own players. The Browns went out and traded for Elijah Moore. They went out and signed Marquise Goodwin from the Seahawks. They brought in another free agent, if I remember correctly, and drafted two rookies, I think, this year. So
it tells you everything. And listen, this is an important year for the Browns. Of Deshaun Watson did not look good at the end of last year. They need, oh my goodness, the public relation with the Browns. If Deshaun Watson flops this year, if the Browns finish last in the division,
burn.
They have so much need to supply Deshaun Watson with everything he needs, and David Bell is somehow still not a part of that equation.
Yep.
So,
and they're going to have to, if they don't win this year, there's a very big blow up happening next year, because you're going to see contract accelerators on Amari Cooper, David Njoku, Nick Chubb. Gets very ugly for the Browns next year. It has to get very pretty this year. So.
As a Steeler fan, my goodness, I want nothing more than that to happen. I want them to go back to square one. I miss when they were the punching bag. Right now, they're like a step above punching bag, but I need them to go back to that. It was a blast on my end, and I feel like the Steelers getting a little bit too close to that for my liking. Although I love their draft. Anyway, the trade I alluded to, the last one of this Dynasty After Party show, I want to touch on what I did earlier today, and I won't lie, it's a little bit of touting my own shoulder. All right, I'm going to pat myself on the shoulder, unless, of course, Ryan here thinks it's terrible. So let's hear it. This is a locked-in early 2024 second. The team is terrible. The owner doesn't know what he's doing. Top 3 in a one-quarterback league. I traded up to get Jaden Reed, which is the 204, and I got the 212, which turned into Bryce Young.
Big win.
I'm all over it right now.
So first and foremost to me, and part of me not following college football is me not liking future picks. So for you to take a future pick that you know nothing about and to bring in second round draft capital wide receiver, first overall pick draft capital quarterback, absolutely you make that trade. You make that trade every single day, because it's something I've learned a lot from listening to you and Joel recently is you need assets that are still going to be valuable next year. Jaden Reed, if all goes well, and certainly Bryce Young are still going to be valuable next year. And if next year's draft plays out like this year's draft, the 14th pick has no value again, and you're back where you started. So it works out very well.
I will say I got a little bit lucky here. I did not expect Bryce Young to fall to the 212. That was a lucky, happy coincidence. And exactly an example of what I said before. I have Josh Allen in this league. I even have Jordan Love, another young guy that could be great. But, Jordan Love could be gone next year. Jimmy Garoppolo could be gone next year. I'm taking the best player on the board in Bryce Young.
Well, let me give you a great example of how that works out for you.
Please.
Talk
me up. I
took Trevor Lawrence on a team where I didn't need quarterback. A struggling team in the middle of the season offered me their first for Trevor Lawrence, which ended up being the 101, which ended up being Breece Hall, which I flipped into Kenneth Walker and a ton of other good players. Like I'm talking, it was I already had Olave, so I turned it into Kenneth Walker and Garrett Wilson. So
and I had a very similar situation a couple years ago as well. I had Dak Prescott when he broke his foot that year. And I was like, oh my God. And that was when Josh Allen was first started breaking out. And it was like a month into it. And I was like, screw it, I'm buying in. And I had to pay everything to get Josh Allen at that point in a one quarterback league. And listen, if I just drafted him and stashed him, I wouldn't have had to do that because he was drastically outperformed what he ended up doing. And that was not again, the reason I bring it up with Bryce Young, I got a little bit lucky there. If this was Roschon Johnson, who is the next name pretty much off the board, give or take, probably the next one on my board,
I would have given you a little bit hard time. I'm also not a big Roschon Johnson guy, maybe because I like Deontay Foreman, and I understand Roschon can roll into that role, but I like Deontay Foreman. I like Khalil Herbert. I don't know how much play Roschon Johnson is going to get early enough for your fantasy team. So now all of a sudden you're dealing with two big question marks, and you're selling the 2024 pick at arguably its lowest value at that point. So then I would have probably been, I would have still given you kudos because we know where those players are and we know what they could turn into. But it's Bryce Young makes this trade for you. And it's hilarious because we started the show with me saying, I don't know how I value quarterbacks in one QB, but you've hit such a good nail on the head. And you reminded me of one of my own trades with the Trevor Lawrence trade, in that drafting these uber talented quarterbacks, even in a one QB, if you handle it properly, it can work out very well for you.
It's a no risk situation in a way because we know they're going to go up in value, and we know Bryce Young is going to be a good quarterback, right? I mean, we feel good about that,
I do. I'm not worried about the size thing. If the Panthers knew what they were doing when they took him 101, if size was that big of an issue, Anthony Richardson would be their quarterback.
Yeah, I've been told many times the size doesn't matter, and whether that will be the case or not, and whether it matters is, a question that we'll find out down the road. And maybe I will too, but we'll move on. And that's what we got. That's what we got for today. I want to thank you, Ryan, for hopping on a little bit last minute as well. But great show. I had a great time.
No, Dynasty is not always the very first thing I'm ready to talk about, but once they land, I'll talk about these with you all day, because whether I know the player or not, I know the team they went to and I know the fit, and it's going to work out really well.
It turns into redraft real quick, it feels like. You know, all of a sudden we own the offseason, and all of a sudden now, listen, we talk about the future, but 2023, that matters just as much. That's a whole other lesson we're going to talk about on a whole other show. And thank you, Mrs. Scampers, for hopping by, as well as everyone else for tuning in. I want to really thank everyone for hopping on into this call. This has been a ton of fun. And be sure to check out Club Fantasy and all the rankings on the site right now, because we're putting a ton of work into them, and it's all there to help you. So check them out. You can follow Ryan here at TheFantasy5 on Twitter. You can follow myself at Michael__Sicoli. I was too late to get the 1_ on Twitter. And one day that guy will give up his account and I will fix that. But today is not that day. Today is the day of the second Dynasty After Party. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back next Sunday, same time, 9:30 p.m. EST, to give you all the Dynasty news you could possibly want to help you guys win your league. So thank you. Have a good night.